Oh, okay, it seems to be.
Hello.
There we go. I can hear you now.
Right.
Uh, it's
You
working.
caught me off guard.
Yeah, I caught you just as you were going, hello.
That is the worst time to do it in front of all those people as well.
It's a great start. It's a great start, man.
What are you gonna do? What are we gonna do, eh?
All right, so let's dive into. I mean, the first thing you wanted to get into, or what you emailed me with. I do not believe animals have the right to life, nor should they ever be afforded it. And I guess this is an. Are you coming from an anti-vegan perspective here, or are you coming just from this point you don't agree with, or like what? Give us your basic kind of what you wanted to get into today, and we can kind of open from there, I suppose.
Okay, cool. So I certainly don't identify as an anti-vegan. I think veganism rather is actually quite a great movement. The work that vegans do in exposing how pretty drastic and how brutal animal slaughter can be, how animal agriculture can work. That is important because people need to know exactly what they're eating and what they're doing to act authentically. If you are one of the people who look at animal slaughter and you react to that badly and you think, oh God, I really don't want to be funding this, don't fund it, be vegan. However, my disagreement with veganism is not so much on the health, not so much on the environmental impacts, it's on the ethical side. It's just the ethical claims vegans seem to make. I know environmental and health are two big arguments vegans make, but I don't think either of those two arguments, as in veganism is better for your health, it's better for your environment, necessarily follows to principled veganism, where you take meat and dairy and etc. out your diet completely. I don't think it leads to that conclusion. It just leads to reducing your meat consumption and having a more balanced diet, maybe. So it's the ethical thing. I think you're going to need to rest on the animal's right to life. Do animals have the right to life? Well, do animals have rights at all? And so I approach this by thinking about why we afford other humans the right to life. Now, as you know, I'm an anarchist. I'm also an egoist. So people who call me selfish, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take that as a compliment.
Okay.
So in human societies, we appeal to mutual self-interest, effectively. So being conceptual beings, which is a strange phrase, being conceptual beings, we are able to conceive rights, and we are able to communicate those rights and respect and apply those rights to each other. And thus, if we mutually acknowledge each other's rights to life and each other's rights to personal property, I'm an anti-capitalist. I don't believe in the right to absentee property, etc., etc. Then we can establish social norms which can create a generally freer and prosperous society, all operating on voluntary cooperation and mutual self-interest. So that's why I think humans have the right to life. Do animals factor into this? Well, as animals are not conceptual beings, the answer is no, I'm afraid, because animals cannot conceive the right to life for themselves, and so therefore they cannot apply the right to life. That's my position.
Okay. So and how does this? Okay, I've got two ways to really go around this. I would ask, first of all, how does this logic apply to people who also don't have a concept of rights, like people who are incapable for whatever reason, like born that way? Like my youngest brother, I hate to make it personal, but he has. I mean, he doesn't have a concept of what this means in any way at all. He doesn't understand rights. He doesn't. So how would it apply to in that sense for somebody who just is in the same position as an animal, basically, in that they also don't understand it?
Okay, so yeah, so there are people who exist who don't have that kind of mental faculty, and we see as a result that they don't really respect rights at all. Psychopaths go out murdering people, and we don't actually afford them the same rights as other people. We certainly don't afford them the right to autonomy. Same goes for children. We don't give children the same rights as adults. They are not free to go and make the same decisions as adults do. So we instead of talking about one or two humans, because I think it's probably best to apply rights across the board for humanity, because we know the vast majority of people can conceive rights. They have the potential to conceive rights given a certain education or whatever. But we do know that the entire animal kingdom cannot do such a thing.
But we're talking about the right to life here, right?
Yeah.
But then, so specifically the right to life, someone who for whatever reason is not capable of acting within those realms, they still have the right to life though. But we're taking that right away from animals because they can't perceive it. Why would a human get the right to life but they wouldn't?
So if a psychopath is attacking you, then they have forfeited their right to life.
Sure, but animals aren't attacking us. That's what I'm trying to understand. If my youngest brother, for example, is not attacking anyone, but he also can't reciprocate rights because he doesn't understand them, he still has a right to life. Why would a cow not have that same right to life if they are also not attacking anyone?
It's not that they are forfeiting the right to life based on that they are attacking them. They are clearly demonstrating that they don't respect or apply your right to life by endangering your life. So I'm not too sure.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Is that so? I'm trying to. Okay, maybe I'm missing something. So the premise is that because animals can't reciprocate rights, they don't understand rights, they don't have that ability, therefore they don't have a right to life. That's what I've understood your point is.
Yep.
Okay, but then my youngest brother also can't understand that or reciprocate that, but he does have a right to life. So then, what is the difference?
Well, I don't know your brother's specific condition.
He's autism and learning difficulties. Basically, he just doesn't understand the society. He doesn't understand his position in that society. He doesn't. It's not like he's going to go out and hurt anyone, but also he doesn't really understand that people have rights, and it's very difficult to explain this to him. Let's not use my brother. Let's use someone else, who was in a much worse position than my brother, who really, really just has no concept at all of right or wrong, and doesn't commit atrocities like cows don't commit atrocities, but still has no understanding of morals or right or wrong. Right? We would give that person the right to life, but in your world, we still wouldn't give it to the cow. I'm just trying to understand the difference between that human and that cow in that scenario.
For one, I'd say I wouldn't rule out their ability to develop and understand those conceptual rights, because as an autistic person myself, I know that I've come quite a long way from when I was a child or when I was younger to develop a general social understanding.
I guess, okay, sorry, just to interrupt. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I mean, just forget the autism thing completely. Like, let's forget that, because my brother, he's also autistic. There are high-functioning autistic people such as yourself. We can forget autism completely, but I mean, there are still conditions out there where people, they're not causing anyone any harm, but also they just have absolutely zero concept of right or wrong. My point is it just by the fact that they're human that they maintain the right to life, or is there another reason that they would have it and a cow wouldn't in this worldview?
I think it would be, because they'll be born and raised with people who love them and care for them and look after them and such.
Right.
I know you're going to say animals do this too.
Yeah.
So again, when we talk about mutual rights, it's easier to apply it across. I'm not talking about rigid objective rights, by the way. I'm not actually a moral objectivist. I'm talking about the application of mutual rights.
Sure.
It's easier to just apply it across the board, across humanity, rather than investigating who cannot be afforded this right. I think it's easier and more applicable to say, well, okay, we're going to apply it to the human race, because humans generally have the ability to conceive and apply and respect rights.
And if humans generally didn't have that, so if 51% of humans didn't have that and 49% did, so the majority doesn't have that, would that mean then that they weren't afforded those rights because they were a minority? If that makes sense. If the majority of humans didn't have that right, then there was a minority that did. Would that change things? I guess because you say if the majority of humans have the ability, then we can apply that to the rest. But what if that were turned on its head? Would that change things then?
I suppose it would. It wouldn't be the case where if the majority of people were literally like animals, then
would you say no one has the right to life then, or would you argue that we still have the right to life?
It would be difficult to afford them the right to life if we do not apply it and respect it themselves.
Right. So I mean, it
wouldn't be mutual, would it?
No, but I mean, so you would be happy. Okay, so let's just go to a conclusion then, I suppose, like a reductio. So if that was flipped like that, then you would be happy to die on the hill and say that, well, no, in that world, then the majority wouldn't have the right to life, and then killing them for sandwiches, whether they were human or not, would be morally acceptable.
You effectively talk about different species, aren't we? Because they're not. So yeah, I would.
So wait, so that would be okay in this in this world is what I'm trying to get to. Like in this hypothetical world.
In this hypothetical world, yeah, I believe that would be okay. We don't afford the same rights to other primates, because species really are it's a social construct, effectively.
Right.
We could say, well, let's talk about great apes. Only a small percentage of great apes are really able to apply and respect rights, but these people would have those rights afforded to them because they can acknowledge them, apply them, and also appeal to them.
Right. Okay. It's a. I mean, I think we could keep going down there, but I think I'd actually rather just change lanes and talk about, like, okay, if I accept your position that, okay, animals don't deserve rights as such because they can't reciprocate them, and in a world where nobody could reciprocate rights, nobody would have them. If that's the way we're going to go, and that you're happy to die on that hill, then I would move over to talk about the obligations then, because somebody doesn't have to have rights to have for us to be obligated to be good to them. You know what I mean? Like rights are a construct, whatever, social construct. And if you don't want to give them to other beings that can't perceive them, that's fine. But what about the obligation that we have to just not be selfish assholes to others? I mean, that's something that's completely separate from rights, is it not? I mean, you wouldn't, for example, you wouldn't kick a dog, but not because you think the dog has rights, because you feel obligated to not hurt that dog, right?
I don't think it'd be out of being obligated to not hurt that dog. More to the fact, I don't think it's a nice thing to do for me, because I don't like putting animals which I love and live with through suffering. Right,
and that would be, and you. Sorry, if I'm understanding correctly, your position to understand, you're proudly an egoist. You talk about being an egoist, and that's yep. Is that in the sense of like. So I've tried to understand what this means, so maybe you can help me and guide me if I'm wrong. Does this mean that you believe that the meaning of good is what you prefer, or does it mean that whatever you do is good?
Well,
which one
good
is
it? That is a good little question. Is it ethical egoism or is it psychological egoism? I discussed that in the video I think you watched a part of.
I did, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think. Actually, no, sorry. Rational egoism we're talking about, not psychological. Rational egoism would say that anything you do for yourself is good,
okay,
or inevitably good. So psychological egoism. If we say what is good, what does it mean to be good?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to understand from you. Is your view on that good? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Good and bad are ultimately value judgments, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you need to have a valuer to have value.
Right.
So it's going to be subjective, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it can be. Yeah. I mean, so that's what I'm trying to understand for you. So if it is subjective for you in that, in the sense that, what is the meaning of good to you is what you prefer. And for example, your preference here is that you don't want to kick a dog. Why? Because you don't think that's a very nice thing to do. So we can focus on that without even needing to get into rights and things like that. We can focus on what your preferences actually are then. So when it comes to veganism and this moral argument, it's kind of, for you, it might largely be insignificant when you're an egoist in that sense. So when it comes to animals, like, what are your preferences then? Like what do you want to do with animals, and what do you think is not good for animals?
So I think animals should be used to better mankind. What does that mean? That's a good question. So, for example, I'm not bothered about pet ownership. I think pet ownership is good because it's good for people's mental health in some cases. It's quite nice to have a dog. It's quite nice to have a cat sometimes. But I think I understand that the animal agricultural industry as it is now is incredibly inefficient, and I do believe that we will come to a time when animal agriculture is abolished, just by the virtue of lab-grown meat. Also, I think if you get rid of the capitalist class, then we are more free to conceive other ideas of how we can organize agriculture. But I think because it does depend on animal rights, because if animals do have the right, or we do afford animals the rights to do these things, then we do have to take their interest into consideration when it comes to manipulating the world and you know, using it for our benefit. For example, if animals had the right to life, then agriculture couldn't exist, because you need to violate the rights of animals' lives who are in the fields whilst you're crop harvesting, for example. You can't have you would get rid of windmills, specifically those what they call wind turbines, because they kill thousands upon thousands of birds a year. So if we care about animals' rights to life, then we would get rid of those things in an instant.
Yeah, that's why I'm not really. I mean, I don't know why, but I've kind of personally, I'm not arguing against that point, because I don't think you need to believe that animals have a right to life to agree with veganism. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can say I don't believe in assigning rights to, you know, animals for whatever reason. If that's the place you take, I don't think it's necessary to do that to be a vegan, which is why I wanted to ask you about your preferences and get into that. And your preferences, that's interesting to me, is that you would like to use animals to the betterment of mankind. And I would like to dive deep, if it's all right with you. I would like to dive deep into a bit more about what that means, because look, on the surface, it's quite a statement to make about animals, and especially the use part, where you use animals to the betterment of mankind. And I would ask, what is the difference, I suppose, between making a statement like that about animals, about, you know, using them against their will, because it is against their will. They may not have rights in your world, but they still have a will. Like, they want what they want, right? Obviously, and it's against their will what we're doing to them. How is it morally different, or whatever? How is it any different from deciding I want to use, I don't know, a member of the human species to the betterment of myself, for example, whether it be, I'm not going to choose a demographic, we don't need to go that far into it, but there are definitely a lot of humans out there, nasty humans, who would say the same exact sentence about another human or another group of humans. What would be the difference between you saying it about animals and them saying it about people?
Our capacity to conceive and apply rights.
So that's where it goes. That's where it starts and ends for you, basically. And then we're back to the other... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I should also say, we do use each other. We use each other all the time. Sometimes it's consensual, sometimes it isn't. Capitalism is a non-consensual, basically where the owners of capital use the proletariat for their own betterment. But the fact that we can conceive of alternative ideas and push for those and fight for them creates, it makes socialism, I suppose, a viable strategy. It's just, this doesn't happen in the animal kingdom. Animals don't consider their social structures. They don't reassess them. They don't critically analyze them. There's no way I can go to a pride of lions and say, hey, now you're going to be an anarcho-collectivist syndicate because this patriarchal structure you've got now isn't good enough for you. You can't do that. Right,
okay. So let me get it all together, what I've understood so far, and then you can say yes or no, or correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So what I'm getting so far is, okay, so so animals be used to the betterment of mankind, right? So that's your take on that. And that means, by the way, like, when we break that down, what it means, that means that animals are experimented on for the betterment of mankind, because that's part of, that would be in this, because it's what it's happening right now. And that's what the non-vegan position is. It's that experimentation is fine. Breeding, using their bodies, like in the dairy industry and the egg industry, is fine. And I want to actually go a bit deeper into this to really, in the slaughterhouses, shooting them in the head, slitting their throats for burgers, it's fine, because it's benefiting some people. It gives them pleasure, for example. If I'm misrepresenting you at any point, just pause. I don't know. Actually, that's a good point. Are we talking here, when you say betterment of mankind? I agree with all this, yeah. Okay, you agree so far. So all of these things are all fine, and also, and they're only fine because the animals can't reciprocate rights. And if the majority of humans couldn't reciprocate rights, you would in your world, in this world, where that were the case, you would be happy to see humans also used for, like, dairy and in slaughterhouses. If the majority of humans couldn't reciprocate rights, that would be also fine in that world to do that to them as well.
That would be the case, yeah.
Right. Okay. I guess that being the case, I guess we can, I don't know. I find that to be like I don't know what the word would be here.
Morally reprehensible.
I guess so. Yeah. Pretty much, man. Yeah. Yeah. Like the fact that it would.
So
one second. So I'll finish up and then you can. Yeah, sorry, I'll finish this point I was going to make. But it's philosophically, I can understand how this is like it's an entertaining thing to think about. But I think when applied practically, like my hypothetical is never going to happen. So you admitting that you would kill and happily kill humans for if they didn't have the right to reciprocate rights, it's no problem, because that's probably never going to happen in any world. But it's the reason it's morally reprehensible, as you said, or the reason I would take massive issue with it is that it is not a philosophical position. It is a real life position, and the animals that we're talking about here go through all of this, and go through the literal hell on earth, like absolute suffering and cruelty and violence. The only reason that they do that is because they have the same mental capacity as a child. It seems like a really kind of evil reason to put them through it.
Why?
Because they have the mental capacity of a child. Like we protect children because they don't have the capacity to understand things, but yet with your view, you flip that on its head and actually punish the animals because they don't have the capacity to understand things.
Well, the children have protections because we know that they have the potential to be to develop that conceptual capacity, don't they?
Right, but
that's how it is.
Right, but even if they don't, you still would afford them the right to not be put into a slaughterhouse simply because their species normally does. And it seems like it seems very unfair to punish a species for simply being born the species they are, and punish them like that. Put literal hell just for being born as the wrong species.
I suppose it does, but without animal rights, what's the problem with it? If you admit that animal rights aren't a thing, what rights are we violating? What moral code are we violating here? I'm trying to understand your ethical, because if you're going to present veganism and what is essentially a moral framework for how humans should relate to animals, interact with animals, we need to hear a solid I'm struggling to speak now. A solid can't do it. A solid framework from the vegan movement to accept that this is immoral. We do need to afford animals rights. We do need to acknowledge their right to sovereignty. Yeah,
the reason I moved on from the rights argument is because as I said, I still stand by it, that I don't see it as, you don't need to believe, for example, you don't need to believe that animals need to have rights to believe that it's also not all right to hurt them. Like you already explained that. You said you wouldn't kick a dog because you wouldn't want to do that. It's not a nice thing and it hurts the dog. Why not just apply that preference to every animal? Why is that preference only applied to a dog?
I suppose it's because of the cultural connotations dogs have with humans.
True. I mean, that's fine, but it's not.
If we lived in Korea where dogs are food, then that'd be food.
Sure, but if you went to Korea now, you wouldn't be happy about it, and that's the point. It's a cultural.
No, the point is, I wouldn't care. Because the point is, I'd be fine with it.
No. But if you were raised in Korea, you would be fine with it. You wouldn't be fine with it right now, though, would you?
I'm not a cultural relativist.
No, but you wouldn't feel comfortable is the point. I'm not saying you were just trying to assert that your culture is right and theirs is wrong, but you wouldn't be pleased with it, surely. On a personal level, you wouldn't be like, I don't mind seeing dogs have their throats slit. I mean, you wouldn't like it.
Okay, fair enough. I wouldn't enjoy it. However, if I was in Korea and they'd said, "Oh, this is actually dog meat," I'd probably eat it. I'd give it a go. Right.
So I mean, kind of back. I mean, that's obviously. I mean, a lot of people would say the same thing probably because they don't have to see the dogs scream and beg for their lives. And I think that's ultimately the problem here is that on a real top level philosophical, discussion like this, I think it's very easy for us to fall into this where. Your things you've admitted definitely would come across as, like you said it yourself, like looking very, very bad and causing harm. And I think that's ultimately where it comes down to. It's not about whether you assign rights to someone, to an animal or not. It's about whether you want to willingly cause them harm for something that you don't need, you have no necessity for, regardless of whether you think they deserve rights or not. It seems, again, just to go back to my point, and I feel like I answered why, it seems very off or horrible to say, I'm going to do this to you simply because of the level of cognition you have. It's almost bullying, a very violent version of bullying. And what I don't understand is why you would choose that rather than choosing the opposite. You could hold every other point, every other thing you've said here right now. You could hold it that I don't think they deserve it. I don't think they deserve rights. I don't agree it, but I do it anyway. Why? Because I don't want to hurt them. I don't see why you wouldn't go for that.
You could do, but I don't prioritize the right. Well, I don't prioritize the lives of animals, and you don't either, because you've admitted that animals don't have rights to life.
But it's not about it's not about prioritizing their rights. It's about changing what you eat and buy to just not put them through hell.
Well, if you're changing your lifestyle just to protect the lives of animals, then you are prioritizing the lives of animals. And I'm asking you why. But
it's not a priority. It's like
David, do you not understand that you haven't given any moral criteria that I'm breaking? You're just saying, oh, that sounds horrible, doesn't it? It's like, well, okay, it doesn't sound nice, but what moral standard am I violating?
You're causing someone else unnecessary harm. You're going out and physically paying for, or maybe doing yourself, animals to be shot in the head and abused for some things that you don't need.
Is the criteria then negative utilitarianism?
Not necessarily. I'm pulling back from this philosophical side now. I'm going more practical here. That's why I maybe you're not getting what you want here. I feel, because this is not a. I'm not a philosophy channel. Maybe if you wanted to go down that road and really dive into that, you'd go better off talking to somebody like Ask Yourself, who is a big vegan debater. Like, you could get into his Discord and get into that. What I'm trying to focus on here is the practical, real world results of holding these kinds of views. So it's not about my philosophical reason that you should consider as another philosophical person. I'm talking about the absolute practical elements of what happens when we do make these decisions, and why would we choose to punish others for being born in the body they're in, simply, and with the mind they're in. It just seems that's the part I'm not able to get my head around. And it's kind of a circular argument, because then you say, well, because they can't reciprocate rights. And I say, but why would you punish them for that? And then you say, because they can't reciprocate rights. Then I say, but why would you punish them for that? And we just go round and around. You know what I mean? I think that's where we're at right now.
Because I'm saying the act is morally neutral. So therefore, the burden of proof is on you to provide an alternative moral framework whereby those actions are immoral. I understand that you don't want to have the philosophical conversation, but we need to have the philosophical, because the philosophy of it is the why. If you say, Alex, why do you not want to? I've given my name away. Whoops. If you say to me, Alex, didn't want to do that. What? You should be vegan, Alex. Thought about you should be vegan.
Yeah.
I say why? Then we're talking about philosophy. Immediately we're talking about philosophy.
Yeah. I feel like I've given you the reason why, because you clearly are not, well, I don't know. I would hope you're not someone who likes to put others, regardless of their species, through hell on earth for a sandwich. I would like to believe that you are that person. And why not put them through hell on earth? Why put anyone through hell on earth? Why should I have to convince you to not put someone through hell on earth?
So if you talk about hell on earth, so you're talking about the suffering, not the life then?
I'm talking about they are. Look, we can crack down really into the lives of animals in these industries. So yeah, go ahead.
What's your opinion on putting a cow to sleep and then eating the meat?
Putting a cow to sleep? You mean euthanizing a cow that's old or sick or something?
No, it could be a healthy. It could be a healthy bull. You put it to sleep, and we eat it. What's wrong with it?
If you've killed an animal for no necessary reason, that's what's wrong with it. It doesn't matter how they die. It matters that
the animal does have the right to life.
Sorry. So
the animal must have a right to life. If the immoral act is taking the life, then the animal must have a right to life.
They don't need to have a political right. No. For you to see that it's not okay to rob their life away from them doesn't mean they don't need to have a legal or political right for that. Political rights. Okay.
I'm not talking about legality. I don't care about legality. I'm an anarchist. I'm talking about ethical rights.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about. Okay. So I wouldn't say it's even about. As I said, I want to go away from the rights argument. I don't think you need to believe that cow has a right to not go and kill them. Like, I think you just need to see them as like, okay, they're living, so I don't want to kill them for no reason. You don't need to believe they have the right to live to think that, though.
You say you don't want to have the ethical discussion.
No, the ethical discussion is fine, just not like a philosophical, like,
Ethics is a branch of philosophy.
Yes, I know, but I'm talking about real.
The ethical discussion is philosophy.
I'm sorry.
The ethical discussion is philosophy, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, but I'm trying to keep it applied to practical real life rather than diving into philosophical, concepts. So my audience is sorry.
I'm not bringing up hypotheticals, but
yeah.
Well, the ethics is a concept. I don't understand why we're avoiding this argument, because to me it's the most important one, and to you as well it's the most important, because you acknowledge that the environmental and the health arguments don't lead to a principled vegan.
No, not alone. No, definitely they can be.
So the ethical argument's important.
Yeah, they can be. They are important.
When I ask you, when I ask you what is your ethics based on, and you don't give me an answer, then I can't go anywhere with that.
I mean, I'm not trying to explain my ethics to you. I'm trying to convince you to stop using animals for sandwiches, man. I mean, this is like what I'm going at here.
But the way you do that is by convincing me over to your ethical positions.
I mean, not necessarily. The reason I'm coming along with you on your animals don't deserve rights is because I'm not interested in convincing you that they do. I'm not interested in convincing you to change any of your opinion. I'm telling you that being vegan is completely compatible with egoism and what the positions you hold.
It is. Like, you can agree with everything I said and still be vegan.
Absolutely.
I'm not an anti-vegan. That's why I said at the start I'm not an anti-vegan.
Yeah, that's why I'm not trying to compete with my view, my ethical position with yours. I'm actually meeting you where you are, and I've not argued against egoism. I've not argued against animals not having rights, because I don't believe any of those is that's it. It's done. Like, you can't be vegan if you. I don't think that's the case. I think someone can be an ethical vegan whilst believing that animals don't deserve the right to life, and also while believing, in egoism, because, I can understand why you don't think animals have the right to life. I can understand why you think that. I can see where that logic would come from. And I don't know if I agree with it or not yet, but I don't see any need to really fight you on it, because it doesn't matter. Like, I could believe you and agree with you and still be a vegan and still not hurt them, simply because I just don't want them to go through pain, because I see they're sentient beings. They have similar emotions and feelings and things to us. They have very similar lives in many ways to us, but obviously we're also very different. But I don't see any of that as a reason to go and carry on doing this stuff.
I understand your point. I get it now. So yes, while it is true that you can be a vegan and an anarchist and a egoist, you said before about putting animals through hell. Okay, we can avoid. There's very good egoistic arguments against the way the animal industry works. So it is very damaging to the mental health of the employees who work in those settings, for the vast majority of them, I should say. And so I imagine if we put the ownership of these industries into the hands of workers, they either would not invest in the meat industry at all, or they'd come up with like a lab meat alternative, just because it's a nicer and also more effective, efficient way of food production.
Yeah.
So that's all fine, and I agree with that argument. Like, and I also agree, if you don't like the idea of animals going through hell, then you can advocate against it.
Well, I hope you didn't, but I hope most people don't. I'm optimistic about that.
However, when I said earlier, okay, you can still eat meat, but not put the animal through hell. You could have a cow which is living even in the wild, maybe. You could euthanize it, and you could eat it. You haven't put the animal through hell.
I mean, well, okay, we need to define hell, I suppose, don't we? I think
immense suffering.
Yeah, well, no, they may not have been through immense suffering, but you've still gone wherever they were and, interrupted and ended their life abruptly for your own pleasure. So, I mean, it's still, it may not be like, well, it may not be torture, it may not be cruelty as such, but it's still going over and doing something violent to them for the sake of a sandwich. You might say, okay, injecting them with the chemical is not violent. I'd say it is. I mean, if it were to a human, it would be violent. We would say that's, you've just killed a human for your own pleasure. Then we would all agree that that's a violent and that people would say that's not a good thing to do. So then, I'd still have a problem with it. Absolutely.
Especially, but when I ask why, you don't want to talk about the ethics. This is my problem, David.
I mean, I thought I've been through why. I mean, you're impeding on another person. You're impeding on another being's life for your own gain, and that I don't know. I don't see why we need to get into why that is wrong. I think anyone with common sense can see why that's wrong. I don't think we need to have an ethical discussion that dives into why that is wrong. I apologize if that's what you came here hoping to get into, that deep, but it's really not. Like, it's not my expertise to get into such a complex thing like that, or even something that, as I said, I think the 99% of people would just say, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want to hurt others. I don't want to get any further than that into that. I think if that's something you wanted to get into, I'd really recommend you go to that Discord I mentioned earlier, because that's a place where they would do that. And that's a place where people actually spend shitloads of time studying and thinking about those problems. This channel really isn't it. And
okay.
So just to be totally honest with you there, I'm basing a lot of, well, no, not a lot of, I'm basing all of my points here and all of my points on this channel on the basic concept that most people would say, yes, it is, there's obvious, and I would never question that it's wrong to go and, interfere in someone's life and kill an animal for a sandwich. Most people, even non-vegans, would say, yeah, actually, to a certain extent, they'd agree with that point, but then they'd make a reason why they still want to do it afterwards. They say, yeah, but I like it, or but it makes me feel good, or but they're here for that reason, and usually just move on from that point pretty quickly. So yeah, if you don't want to base it on, if you want to end it there because of that, that's totally your call. But I really would just base that part on common sense and not go any deeper into why it's not okay to kill someone for a sandwich, basically, or kill anyone. Yeah, I mean, obviously for you, it's yeah.
Sadly, I would have to say that is a logical fallacy. It's called the appeal to majority fallacy, whereby, like the appeal to nature, we're saying, oh, this is correct because most people would think it's correct.
No, not correct.
Because I could throw it back at you and say, well, most people aren't vegan. It wouldn't be an argument.
Sorry, it's not a logic. I'm not making a logical fallacy. I'm telling you that I won't go further into it because it's a premise that I see as already. It's a premise that I don't think needs to be in this point further investigated. I just don't agree with you that needs to be investigated. I'm not saying, oh, here's my logical fallacy, let's move on. I'm saying I don't want to go further into that point because I don't see it as being a point that's necessary for this debate. But if you do, then absolutely that I would understand you not wanting to continue or wanting to change to something else. I would get that. So yeah, no worries.
That's okay. I can move on to a different topic if you'd like.
Sure. I mean, yeah, because I guess, that kind of comes to an end point there with that line of kind of where we were going. But ultimately, all the philosophical things aside, I still, I don't think, I'm still struggling to understand, for example, so earlier on we talked about we spoke, well, okay, let's stay where we are, but let's not we can switch tracks again. So you mentioned that for a cow, like putting a cow to sleep, as you put it, or euthanizing a cow and eating them, you asked me if I would have a problem with that. And I guess obviously you're asking that because maybe you don't have a problem with that. Would I be right? Is that would you say that you don't have a problem with that scenario?
I wouldn't have a problem with that scenario.
But you would have you would have a problem with the scenario where they are. Sorry, go ahead.
I would not have any problem with taking a cow's life.
In that specific scenario, or in any?
Well, in any scenario, but if we talk about this specific scenario,
so in the scenario where cows are like forcibly impregnated and people shoving their hands in them and kept inside their whole life and then sent to a slaughterhouse, lined up, shot in the head, slit the throat of, you wouldn't have a problem with that the same way you wouldn't have a problem with them being injected, for example? Or do you see a difference in what you would prefer one of those two?
I suppose there is a difference in terms of, obviously, I think humans don't quite like brutality or excessive brutality, and what's
the reason for that? What's the reason you would have a problem with excessive brutality?
I think it's indicative of psychopathy.
Indicative of psychopathy?
Yep.
Right. And what would then, like, excessive brutality meaning, like, I mean, that's also kind of wide open, isn't it? Like, that is an example of something we need to define. For example, I'm not sure how much common sense that is. So, in your world, excessive brutality, I guess, what are we talking about in your world? What does that mean?
So, I'd say putting animals through an unnecessary amount of pain, which would be, I'd say, excessive brutality,
Okay.
and that would be you're inflicting harm against an animal for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
So rather than killing, if a guy was going around killing wild animals and are just leaving them there, I'd say, well, that's what you're doing. Just wasting resources. You just, great.
Yeah.
Probably don't do that. I'd also say the way battery farming is handled could be done a lot better. This is why I say when lab meats and when lab milk, for example, are mass produced and we have them readily available,
right,
then I'd sort of say, well, it's far more efficient. So why bother with the animal agriculture?
Right. So there's a few points that are interesting there. So that I found really interesting about how the excessive brutality. I think earlier you used unnecessary brutality as well, and
yep.
that's a good point to touch on, because I mean, it is unnecessary as a whole, because this is a whole other topic if you wanted to get into it, but there's many vegans out there that are living proof at all different levels of athleticism, or right way down to just average people, live perfectly healthy lives without any of these animal products. So the whole process is unnecessary, full stop. So you could argue that it's all unnecessary brutality, whether it's done with kicking the animal or whether it's done by just sending them to a slaughterhouse. It's brutality, and it's unnecessary, because we can function perfectly well without it. And some people get even more benefits from it, but most people don't. Most people are just like, okay, I felt okay before, I feel okay now. It's not like veganism's a magic pill that makes you just super fit or something. So we can be the same as we are without it. So it is unnecessary. Talking about the efficiency, it also is more efficient as well, like to live that way. As in these products that, okay, there's no lab meat, there is lab meat, but it's expensive, and there is lab milk, but it's expensive. But it's not like there isn't anything else that's efficient. In the UK especially now, there's plenty of things that are efficient, and not just mock meats and mock cheeses, but like things like plant-based products that you can buy and eat that are incredibly efficient in the sense of time in versus energy out of these things, and the time to prepare them and all. It is efficient now as well. So it's kind of there's two levels there. I see you when you're talking. I see that you do agree with veganism, but maybe that for whatever reason you I don't know, don't want to go and do that. But the way you were arguing, then I could see easily that these are vegan arguments. Like, you're making pro-vegan arguments with what you're saying about factory farming and efficiency.
Yeah. So I'd say, yeah, you're going to hate me for this, but the taste will come into it. So before I go into that, I'd say that the word necessary or unnecessary wasn't the best word, because it's what does it mean to be necessary? When I use the word necessary, I said, well, I mean to say this action is necessary to gain, or is a requirement to get a result. So, for example, the meat.
Right.
Now, I do agree that is not necessary it's not essential that you eat meat anyway. You are living proof that you don't need to. Yeah. But again, you're gonna be disappointed when I say, well, we have to go back to the ethics then, don't we? We have to go back to why the whole thing
I don't think so, actually, because I think I don't think the ethics for you are as important as the taste, as you did mention. I think ultimately, when it boils down to it, it's all the like I already stated my position on your philosophies, that I think your philosophies are absolutely, and this, are completely compatible with giving animals a level of respect, and you don't need to give them rights to give them respect. You don't need to give them anything really to, for example, if I were to look at some horrible human, evil piece of shit who'd done some disgusting things and they were in lifetime in prison, I would say no, they don't deserve rights. Like, screw them. I would even say take their rights from them. They are horrible. But then I would still have a level of respect that I still wouldn't want to see them tortured or killed, or I would want them to at least have a basic level of, you know, like a life that didn't involve a lifetime of being someone's slave, or, you know, or something horrible. Even though I think they would deserve no rights, I would still give them that level of respect. And I would say most, you know, you probably would too, to a certain extent. So why would we not, you know, assign that to animals too? This is what the point where I'm kind of losing here is I think what you believe is so very compatible. And I'm wondering is if the real reasons, not real, but if the more important reasons for you to not go vegan are actually more surface level, like you just like how things taste, you just like how easy things are. And if that's the case, then that, you know, that would be good to discuss as well as these kind of intricate philosophical ideas, you know, because this top level stuff is also is what most people think about. And having some knowledge of philosophy doesn't mean that we don't think about this too, right? Like, it's easier for me, it tastes good for me, it's, you know. So
convenience and taste do factor into it. There's also family meals, being in social settings with other people, also enjoying food. If there's no vegan options at a particular restaurant, then you're screwed. A lot of it would also be about convenience. I understand that as the vegan movement grows and increases, more of those options are going to be on the table, because that's how supply and demand works. So I guess we can. I guess I'm struggling to avoid the ethical argument again, because I put a no-go zone around ethics.
What was the question you wanted? What was the question you wanted to ask? The only point I didn't want to go into was why it's wrong to, you know, infringe on someone else's body for a sandwich, because that for me is just an obvious. You know, I don't see why we need to dive into that specific point any further, but we can talk about ethics and other things. I don't know. I'm not putting like a stopper on the whole conversation. I'm just saying that specific topic is kind of like, that's going to lead down a path that's just going to get into a crazy, deep philosophical, like 7 levels deep shit. And this is not what I do here. It's just not where I am. It's not, I don't even know those areas well enough to get into it with you at any kind of intellectual level, to be honest. I would need to go away and go and do more research into meta ethics and meta things like that, you know, like that. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? So there's no real, I don't see any utility in going down that specific road there, but we can still, if you've got other questions that relate to ethics, then, you know, talk about, you know, go ahead, just not that specific question. That's all I'm saying. That's going to go too deep for me.
Okay. So I was watching the stream this morning,
yeah,
and a point I sort of felt confused when you said it. It seemed like you were justifying castrating dogs.
Yeah, for the point being that if you're not in a position where you're capable of looking after more animals, you should be responsible to ensure that you don't end up having to, you know, basically put animals in a cruel environment where they aren't properly cared for.
Are you in favor of castrating poor people?
Castrating poor people? Well, they have the ability to make decisions based on right or wrong. Dogs don't. Dogs just bang indiscriminately, whereas poorer people you can educate and explain to them why maybe it's not a good idea for them to, especially if you're responsible for them. Like, if I had a family of poor people that I was trying to keep not poor, I would politely request they stop, you know, having babies until we got out of this situation, and they could understand that, and it would be easy to, well, maybe not easy, but at least I could try and appeal to their sense of, you know, the sense of understanding.
So you're making the case that poor people, people living in poverty, have the capacity to understand their situations and make decisions about those. What about people who don't have that capacity, that mental capacity?
If they don't have
Should they be castrated?
Not castrated, no. But we could again. There are ways to prevent it.
Why not?
Because I don't know. You could prevent it. There are ways you could prevent it from happening. Yeah. There's still. How? It depends on the. Are you talking? I don't know.
There's ways you can prevent your dog from being from having intercourse with another dog. You don't have to cut its bollocks off.
It depends, doesn't it? Though, if it's your dog, absolutely, yeah, you absolutely can, and I would definitely. That's where I would be considering. If I had dogs in my care and they were, there's a very specific situation where I would consider neutering a dog. It's not like every dog. I think every dog should be neutered. Only very specific. I wouldn't want to put my dog through surgical procedures if I didn't absolutely have to. A dog that was in my care. Speaking of, if we're talking about dogs out in the wilderness, in the streets and stuff like that, well, then it's different. You physically can't do anything about it, and then it's you could argue that it's for their own good, but then there's still the counter argument to that. I'm not married to any of these arguments. I think earlier I used this as an example as to if somebody had cows, this was it, and she was saying, would you drink their milk if you had the cows at the, if they were producing babies? And I would say, well, no, I'd actually want to stop them from making babies because, especially if I didn't have the capacity to care for more cows. But if I did have the capacity to care for more cows, I would let them have babies, and it would be fine. It would be fine. The castration came up as just, the reason people neuter dogs is similar. But I'm not married to that at all. I'm not going to die on that hill at all.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of putting any animal through surgery unless it's absolutely necessary. Yeah. I'll do everything before that, everything possible before even resorting to that. And that would be the same case with these humans that you're talking about. Every single thing I could possibly think of would be done before even considering putting anyone, human or non-human, under a knife. Like everything possible.
Well, I think the right to bodily ethics again. The right to bodily autonomy would prevent such a thing. Like, it's for your own good. Well, I wouldn't. I draw a line there.
It depends. The bodily autonomy. Well, yeah. If it's their bodily autonomy won't mean shit if they starve to death. So if your action putting them under a knife is going to stop them from starving to death, then you make a decision, you weigh it up, don't you? Like, okay, this is not good. I am infringing on their bodily autonomy, but it'll save their life. Like, for example, if someone's lying in the road bleeding out, I'm not going to ask them, can I have your consent to stitch you up? Like, no, you're just going to fucking do it because they're going to die. So that would be a bit a different scenario, but this is what I'm saying. If it's literally to save them from starving to death or otherwise, then you would infringe on you would the ideas like of I would never do that. I mean, they're all quite flexible, aren't they? There are many situations where you would do things that you do not agree with, but you would have to break your own rules in some areas to do something that was more important, right? And this is one of them.
Okay, so I think there's a distinction between our. This isn't going to go too deep. Our ethical principles. So I think you're coming from a consequentialist position, which means the consequences are more important than the intention.
The consequences are more important than the intention. That's I don't know. To be honest with you, that seems like that. I would have to give that way more thought before I could say yes or no on that. It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't marry to it right now because it's not something. As I said earlier, this philosophical side of things is quite new to me. I am learning a little bit. I've been involved in these kind of debates, but mostly no. Mostly it's top level. I stay at top level. My YouTube is not a philosophical debate YouTube as such.
Okay, fair enough. Because you understand why I'm trying to veer around it, but I can't quite. What else is there to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, I suppose. I mean, ultimately, I lost my train of thought here. I want to circle back again to the points where we were getting at earlier about so talking about your concerns about, like, for example, like taste and getting out to restaurants, things like that. I mean, the things that you find to be unnecessarily brutal, like factory farming, for example, we spoke about. I mean, when talking about taste, and I guess I'd like to know what's more important for you: the feelings you have towards farming and these brutal practices, or the taste and the convenience, because it's like they don't match up. We're living in a world where factory farming is the case for like 90% of animal products. So, taste and convenience might be up there for you, but then that's what you're funding if you are putting that above, if you're putting that as importance, you're funding the factory farms that you're also against. So then how does that marry up with you and your kind of day-to-day choices? Like, why would taste and convenience take the priority over the factory farming you disagree with?
Well, because of my ethical positions, I do come to the conclusion that my general well-being and my general convenience and pleasures do come above things which I have no moral what's the word? Moral principles on, I should say.
Right. And if you could get everything that you like now, like all the taste, the convenience, and everything that without doing all of that to animals, would you choose that, or would you still choose to eat the animal products because you don't see them as like morally deserving of you to not do that?
I would absolutely choose the lab alternatives if they were as cheap and, well, even cheaper than the animal alternatives.
Right. So then I would ask, what have you tried then? I mean, because I don't know what alternatives of what you've even looked into. But,
Yikes.
I mean, clearly, go ahead.
This is where the mic drop hit is. I'm an ex-vegan.
Right.
I don't want to say it because when ex-vegans come to debate vegans, it's like, I've been through all this. I've got some eternal knowledge of veganism. But I would say the cheese was crap. The stuff I got from Holland and Barrett's were, one, expensive, and two, not as tasty. Also, that kind of stuff is junk food. I'm not a massive fan of raw veganism, of the diet of raw veganism, I should say. So, yeah.
So you're like eating a plant-based diet for like, how long were you eating a plant-based diet for? 2
years.
So you were eating like literally like a whole like only plant-based for 2 years.
Oh yeah, I was a full vegan. I was an activist. I've been with Voices for the Anonymous for the Voiceless.
Yeah.
In the streets of Sheffield back in the day, but my ethical stance has changed. So yeah.
So what exactly happened then for you to be so passionate about helping animals to then being apathetic to them? Like what was the change?
My stance on ethics. I went from utilitarianism to I started investigating more about philosophy and how animals factor into the idea of ethics. I've come to an egoist conclusion.
But we could have done all of that and still not abused. You could have done all of that and still not started abusing animals again. I'm just kind of, what made you? Okay, what made you go from, okay, I now don't believe the things I used to believe, and then decide, and that's why I'm going to start doing this again to animals. That's the bit I'm not getting here. Like, what was the driver to make you say, well, I'm gonna go one step further and just start doing that again? Because that's where, for someone who's done AV and stuff, I'm finding that to be quite an interesting jump for seemingly not any real reason. Like, was there something happened that made you just go, okay, or you just were reading one day and decided, fuck it, I'll just start. I know what you've seen the videos, you know what's happening. I'm kind of lost about how you decided that was all cool again.
I think the main drive, because I think I was an egoist and vegan at the same time, and I think the driver would definitely been just the social awkwardness of it. So you're being uncomfortable with like people treating you weird because you're a vegan, stuff like that. And like the lack of vegan options at restaurants or in social settings. You go to a barbecue, there's no vegan food there. So what I started to do was, well, I've got no reason to be a principled vegan, so I'll be more flexible about it. But
you did have a reason to be a principled vegan. Like, the animals didn't stop getting abused because you changed your ethical stance. That there's still those videos you saw are still happening. They're still screaming and kicking, and it's all still happening. So like, that didn't change. So that's why I'm kind of trying to understand how you came to that new conclusion, that, and also you will have definitely in AV, you will have argued against people who said, well, it's inconvenient and people treat me differently. You would have been the person telling them, hey, don't worry, we've got a community. It might be tough at first, but it's going to be all right. Like, people are going to be weird with you, but like, who cares? Like, it's look at what they go through. You will have argued that point and said, think about them, when did you stop thinking about them?
When I changed my ethical stances.
So your ethical stance changed, and you just thought, well, their screams and everything on those screens that I was showing people, none of it doesn't matter anymore. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's an appeal to emotion. So yeah.
I mean, no, I'm not. It's not an appeal to emotion. I'm asking you.
It is.
It's not an appeal to emotion. I'm asking you, like, why did it stop mattering? I'm not asking you to be emotional. Like, them being in pain and suffering was something you were passionate about before, and then it wasn't. And I'm trying to understand what made you go from caring to not caring. I'm not. I'm trying to understand what changed. I mean, I can't possibly believe that one day you just changed your ethical stance and that was it. I'm trying to understand how you know what I mean?
It was a gradual process of reintroducing stuff into the diet. I've said the ethical position changed. The ethical principle I took against animal slaughter, because I believed in animal rights. I believed in the idea that we needed to minimize suffering. I believed in those things. I believed that was our obligation as human beings. But then I didn't.
But I'm going to guess you didn't tell people that on the street. I mean, like, obviously people don't, like, this is a conversation between two people that kind of, know something about philosophy, but to the average person and to you living day to day normally, this isn't a conversation you'd have. You would focus on the absolute top level of, look at these animals, look at how they scream, and look what they go through. You don't have to pay for that. How simple is that? And you don't have to. All you got to do is don't pay for it, and then this is going to start to help this not happen anymore. I don't think there needs to be a bigger discussion as we're having. We are, obviously.
I didn't. No, I did. That wasn't my approach. My approach would have been, you are obligated to not fund this, and not, you don't have to do this. It's, you shouldn't do this at all.
Right.
That was the point.
Right. But even if that wasn't the approach, I mean, the approach I'm literally telling you right now is what I've just said there. I mean, why can it not be so simple that you clearly don't want to see, you wouldn't like to see it, and you don't watch Dominion now, you don't watch those documentaries and say, well, now my ethics have changed, all of this is like not bothering me. I'm sure it's still like is not pleasant to see this. I'm sure you still feel something, empathy. So why not focus on that rather than focusing on the reasons you shouldn't care? Why not focusing on the reasons that you should? And your empathy, your sense of compassion, your sense of like the one you had before. It doesn't need to be that you obligations and rights and all that stuff doesn't need to be there anymore. It's all right. Why not just focus on you and how you feel about them, and that you wouldn't want that to happen to you. You wouldn't want that to happen to any dog that you have. Why not just apply that to them and say, well, I'm going to, even though I don't agree with all this stuff, I'm going to still not going to do it. That's what I'm trying to piece the puzzle together here to find out why not just do that.
Well, because that is the appeal to emotion. That's what the appeal to emotion is. If I say, right, I'm going to base my decisions on my emotional reactions to the actual videos, then, but not actually think about the reason why I'm going to take a principled stance against it.
I'm not. Yeah, but this isn't. I mean, I'm not. This isn't a debate right now. This isn't me. This isn't me trying to get you into any kind of corner. This is just me literally asking you, person to person. You don't need to justify why you don't want to hurt animals, man. Like, no one needs to have a debate justification for that. It's simple. People understand why you don't want to hurt animals. They don't need it explained. You just say, well, look, I mean, I don't want to put them through that. I mean, we don't need to go any deeper than that. I just don't want to put them through that. I don't feel good about them going through that. And neither do you. Clearly, no one watches those videos and says, whoa, fun. Only the idiots do that. And they're just being stupid. They're just, defense mechanism. We both know that. But people normally are very upset about it. And it's not an appeal to emotion to say, this upset me, so I changed things, and now I'm not going to do that anymore. It's just compassion and empathy. It doesn't need to be explained out. It doesn't need to be logically defined. It's just that I don't want to put someone else through that, so I won't do it. And that's it. That's all it needs to be. So I understand where you're coming from totally, but I really don't see it as incompatible with your sense of empathy, which you clearly still have. And you know, you said you don't want to be associated with psychopathy. Clearly, it's because you still have empathy. And now I'm wondering, why not just remember that empathy and you know, bring a bit of that back into your life and, you know, retouch that, because that's what makes us human, man. You know, not philosophical debates and logic. The empathy is what makes us humans, not robots, in my opinion.
Well, the empathy is what makes us animalian.
Yeah, and there's nothing so wrong with that, is there? I mean, you know, I know some people who act and speak like robots, and that's cool, and then, you know, good for them. But I wouldn't like everyone to be like that, and I certainly hope I never get like that. And I'm sure you wouldn't want people to see you as that, really, either. Or would you want to be that? You know, I wouldn't. So yeah, I don't know, dude. I guess I hope that to round off, because we're closing in on time. I would hope that that's what you do. I really hope that you just rediscover that a little bit and reel back a little bit away from the solid logic for 2 seconds to just think about that, and maybe you get back in touch and you know, reconsider, I would hope.
Okie doke. It seems to me that is where the fundamental disagreement lies, in terms of maybe I do take ethics far too seriously. Maybe I should be less focused on the rational and more focused on the emotional. Perhaps
a little bit, at least. I mean, I'm not saying you should just abandon logic. I think logic's brilliant, and I think it's you know, these are good discussions. But you know, when others' lives are in the mix, I think it definitely doesn't hurt to have a little bit or a lot of compassion and empathy for them. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yep. But I do still hold. And this will be my final comment. And okay. It sounds like I'm repeating myself. I do still hold that veganism is necessarily an ethical proposal for how humans should relate, engage, and interact with animals. And this is going to be a case. This is going to be a problem. Not a problem as in a bad thing. It's going to be a thing for people to think about and solve in a plant-based world. And so these frameworks need critical analysis, and they need to be thought about and presented on the vegan platform.
Well, then I would ask you to do that then. Why don't you go vegan because you're empathetic and compassionate, and then search for the solid logic behind it for someone who has your logical position, and why don't you be the one who does that then, rather than being the one who goes on the opposite side when clearly you give a shit about animals, like clearly you still care about them, but you have adopted a new way of looking at things. You would be extremely powerful on the other side of this, using your empathy to drive the logic to make it make sense. As people like the ones I referred you to, like Ask Yourself, his entire debating Discord, this is kind of what they do. Like they make it logical. They make it make a lot of sense. You know, not only on the, you know, having empathy and compassion, but they really go deep into this and on a really analytical space. I would hope you would take up the mantle of joining them with that, rather than an argument against them. But either way, I really hope you actually go and speak with them. I think you would find it really, that's probably what you're more looking for the debate side of things. But on the personal side of things, as someone who seems to me to be like, I don't know, dude, I don't know you very well, but from our discussions, you know, here and previously, you seem like a nice guy. And I would hope that you know, reconsider and bring a bit of empathy back. And I hope to see you go vegan and start using these arguments for the animals and not against them.
Yeah, I think if it was just me going vegan on my own, that could be fine. But if my problem would be with the existence of the animal industry and the way it's done, then I would need to go out and tell people that they are obliged to go against that. And so therefore I'd need to then refer to an ethical reason why they should do it, well, rather than appealing to emotion.
Yeah, well, there you go, dude. Go and do it.
Otherwise I'd be contradicting myself, wouldn't I?
Well, yeah, so do it then. Go vegan, go and join the Ask Yourself Discord and have this shit out with them, and you will find your place. You'll find that logic you're looking for right away. There's no doubt. These are people that spend literally, and I mean this literally, like 6 hours a day debating this topic. So, you know, if you don't find it there, you won't find it anywhere. But it's not with me, man. I can't help you find this you know, this logic that you're going to use to make yourself feel consistent with your inner logic. I can't help you find this, but they can. Okay. You know, they really can. So I will inbox you on Twitter the link to that Discord, and I'll speak to Isaac, who runs it. I'll tell him about our discussion. I'll give him a basic of what we just talked about and where you're at, and I'm sure he would be up for either talking to himself, or at least you could get into there and talk to some other people and have this debate. But yeah, I again, one more time, I would hope that you go in there with the intention of finding out like a logical vegan argument that makes sense for you, and I hope in the meantime you would go vegan again, go vegan and consider what, you know, start considering what you used to consider a lot more seriously.
Okie doke. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
And I hope we revisit, and, you know, maybe in some time. I don't know, dude. I've got a strong feeling that you're gonna come back around and have a different view pretty soon, and I hope you do. I really hope you do. And when you do, I'm going to be optimistic. When you do, I would hope you come back here again and you're on the same side, and we can actually get into this and give people some ammunition to help people go vegan rather than argue in the opposite side. I really hope that's the next chat we have, but we'll see. So thanks again, man. And thought that if anyone wants to check out his content, is on YouTube. It's mainly political content, nothing to do with veganism, right? You don't have any vegan videos or anything, do you?
No, but I don't plan to.
Okay.
I'm not an anti-vegan, as I say.
Cool.
So
cool.
There you go.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. And I'll catch you later.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.